Welcome back, everyone, to Healing Conversations with Gloria and Ingrid. This is episode 6, and today we're going to be exploring how's it possible to stay engaged in a conversation or in a relationship when the other people are not being relational. That can pose quite a puzzle.
Can and I guess what I want to acknowledge is first of all how often this question comes up,
Mm,
um, and how painful it can be when we are, I suppose, especially when we have learned some skills to be relational, to stay relational, we're really wanting to practice that with people that matter to us.
yeah.
And we have the sense that they can't stay relational.
Mhm.
It's painful.
It can be, and it can be very tempting to make ourselves wrong. That it must be my fault. I'm just not doing it
Yeah,
right. I
yeah,
never have, and I
yeah,
never will. And I can just
yeah,
go through that
yeah,
spiral quite
yeah,
quickly. Or I can just get ticked
yeah.
off and I can make
Or
you wrong. It's all your
yeah, that's
fault.
right.
You just don't listen to
Absolutely.
me. You never have a
Yeah, that's right.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Or or get really angry, get really frustrated, um, and maybe go to that place where you just want to give up on trying to be
Yeah.
relational with others and go back into, well, I'm just going to need to be alone because I'm never going to find people who are able to have the kind of connection with me that I'm really longing for. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
So for me, when this has popped up in my own life or even with clients, is just encouraging to slow down and begin to breathe and notice what I'm telling myself.
mm, mm,
Notice what is the chatter that's starting to drive my behavior,
mm,
those thought clouds that create a whole different, it's like, well, where our thoughts go, our
mm,
energy will follow quickly,
mm,
unless we actually pay attention and notice that.
mm, mm.
And also
You know what
breathing.
though? Uh, You know what I was thinking though, Gloria, just as you were
Uh,
saying that, I was wondering, do we need to explain what we mean by relational? Have we covered that in these conversations so far?
well, we may have in some form or other, but it does seem pretty important for this conversation.
It does,
So,
doesn't
what
it?
would being relational mean to you, Ingrid?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking, because it popped up for me more in the context of, well, what is it like when someone is being not relational? Um,
Well, we
and
could
I
start
guess
with that.
we could start with that, couldn't we? And so I guess the biggest examples that I can think of, and I know I've done this myself many times, of someone going non-relational would be um, where the person just shifts into trying to fix
Yeah.
or goes into kind of judging and interpreting and analyzing, and you can no longer feel any flow of warmth between you and the other person. So they've flipped into their left hemisphere really, and they're running a very kind of rational sort of strategizing way of being, which lacks warmth. That
Absolutely.
would be one way.
That would be one way.
Yeah.
And another way would be to be in your face. And,
Yes.
just the enmeshment that can happen.
Mm.
And just so close. And then without any warning, gone.
Yeah.
And that would be another way, a more
Yeah.
ambivalent way of
Yeah.
attaching or being
Yeah.
unattached.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
so there's not really any differentiation between self and other.
That's right. Yeah. Differentiation was the word that popped in for me. That when we're relational with another being, we are differentiated, and therefore we are able
Yeah.
to be connected without
Yeah.
losing ourselves. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So there's an interpersonal relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
because we really do need that. We're not just a solo island, and we're
Mm,
not stacked on top of each other.
mm, that's right.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the other ways that people can be non-relational is to leave,
Yeah. Or be
like just to
dismissive.
leave or
Yeah.
be dismissive. Yep, yep, yeah,
Or just not answer.
mm.
It's like, hello, are
Yeah,
you hearing me?
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
that can be really painful though, is if you finally have the courage to speak up, especially if it's like a group setting and you speak up
mm,
and there's no response.
mm,
It's
mm,
like, wow.
mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. It feels like a more complete conversation now that we've explained what we mean by
Yeah.
being
Well,
non-relational.
and so
Yeah.
when someone's
Mm,
non-relational, then even having the courage to say, oh, okay, well, let me just pause for a moment and check in because
mm,
I'm just feeling a little bit of whatever in my body. For me, it
mm,
would be like, wow,
mm,
okay, maybe there's like a tension in my heart or a heavy
mm,
gut.
mm,
And I'd like to check in with you for a moment. Would that be okay? And
mm,
start to fish for consent. Is there
mm.
anyone home?
Yeah.
Because, maybe I'm wanting to be relational and they really need space. We
Yeah.
don't know if we don't check in.
No.
If we just all of a sudden tag someone as if you are non-relational,
Yeah.
you must be avoidant or you're just dismissive. We're going into our not being relational
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
doing that. So to
Yeah.
slow down, self-connect in
Mm,
order to check in
mm,
and get consent to hear
mm,
what's happening for that other
mm,
being
mm.
can be
The other
really
thing,
supportive.
sorry, yes. Yeah.
Mm.
And the other thing that's good about that slowing down and self-connecting part of the process is that it enables us, as you started to say before I requested that we talk about what non-relational meant, you were starting to talk about noticing the internal chatter
Mhm.
and the stories that we're running, because pretty much everybody that I've ever kind of explored this with has had really painful experiences with important people and important moments
Yes.
disappearing from relationship, which means that pretty much everyone carries painful chatter, painful stories about what it means when that happens. And it's really helpful if we can notice what that story is, because otherwise it's going to color the way that we continue in that interaction or exit the interaction.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it colors our
yeah,
perceptions for sure.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that can be a pattern. We can begin to notice what
Mm,
stimulates that.
mm,
Um,
mm,
I know for myself, when I've
mm,
slowed down to do my own inner process work, many times I will uncover an unconscious contract that's actually running my emotion and my motivation of behavior.
mm, mm,
And
mm.
many times those contracts, they were quite creative when I was in the moment and needed that to survive something that felt so
Yeah,
painful.
yeah.
When we can go through that process in order to release that,
Mm,
then there's a new beginning that can start to happen too.
mm, mm.
And anyway, it's a bit of a process to slow down and actually be with it. There can be many different flavors.
Yeah,
It's not a quick fix,
yeah.
but it's really honoring the experience that we've had
Mm,
that's created that conditioning within us.
mm, mm, mm,
Mm.
mm. Because I think when we're in an important exchange with someone and then we have the perception that they have left the relationship in whatever
Mhm.
way they have, can take us to a really old place,
Yeah.
um, can really touch on, well, it can get our panic grief circuits running pretty strongly.
Hmm.
Um, and those are times when we really need to practice our capacity to accompany ourselves
Yeah.
and to notice what it is we're really longing for. Mm, mm.
Yeah. It can be super helpful to have an empathy buddy to ring up for some empathy support.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
also, though, it's important that we recognize what we are reaching for.
mm, mm,
So when I was younger, I might call up a girlfriend and just want her to really agree with me. And then,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so when we really want to foster authentic relationships,
Yeah.
it's really quite lovely to receive what I'd like to say, oxygenated empathy support. So it's just
Mm,
pure empathy
mm,
that can make it safe that I can own whatever I might need to own as well. So
yeah.
I can grow up some of my own patterns into and have an evolution of me.
Mm,
So I
mm,
can then expand my heart, I can
mm.
expand my mind, my spirit to develop more capacity
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
really curious about this other
Yeah.
being.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, we talked about it a little bit, I think in these terms, but the idea of putting our own oxygen mask on first,
Yeah.
the empathy oxygen mask, so that we can re-engage, or we can stay engaged with this other being,
Yes.
with compassion and empathy for what might be going on for them.
Mm.
That makes it really hard for them to stay
Yeah.
engaged, um, in that moment. Mm.
A thought just came up that I'm going to share. It was when my son was quite a bit younger, and he had some sensory issues to where
Mm.
he would become very overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And if he would start to become very like an anger reaction, or I would call it going limbic, he'd have a limbic
Mm.
burst.
Mm.
I did something that was quite marvelous once. I said, "Oh my goodness, look what I found." I pulled out of my pocket. And he's like, "What is it?" And I go, "It's chalk. It's magic chalk." And I drew this big circle, and it was a circle of trust. And what it
Mm.
was really inviting relationship. And I drew it out and I says, "We step in this circle, then we will be kind to one another and listen. And if we can't do that, we'll step out of the circle." And so to find ways that you can bring creativity in, but when you can actually move the body in the circle
Yeah.
or out of the circle, when
Yeah.
we can start to bring some movement, it can actually start to bring a rhythm in that's
Mm.
relational.
Mm.
And it's a little bit of it was a subtle thing, but it was like
Mm.
play, but it's
Yeah.
also creating a container that you
Yes.
step into and you have agreement about what it's like when you're in there. Because
Mm.
sometimes it can be difficult to stay in the conversation because we think we're not going to have any choices.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I want to really honor that,
Yeah.
and that it needs to be
Yeah.
reciprocated. It's not just one person leading the show. And
Yeah.
you need to communicate the way that I say is relational.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And thinking that, that for some of us, and maybe for everybody in some circumstances, um, words on their own are not supportive for staying in
Mm.
relationship.
Mm.
Yeah. Which is
Yes,
tricky for me because I tend to be quite a verbal person, and you may have noticed, just possibly. and so and so I've really had to learn, and that there are all these other ways. There are all these other ways of inviting myself and others to be in relationship.
Yes, there are some that really enjoy just hanging out and being silent together,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
needing many words at all.
Mm, mm,
Um, and then there are some that I've experienced that if you're having a conversation and you say a certain word, they'll pull out a dictionary to prove what you just said. And so, I mean, it can be quite extreme. It's like, not what I meant, but it's what you said.
yeah. Oh yes.
Okay, well, then
Yes.
I'll make a repair because this is what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how do you
Yeah.
stay
Yeah.
engaged without going into that right or wrong,
Yeah.
good or bad,
Yeah.
in or out?
Yeah. And hmm, I think one of the things that's helped me the most, uh, has been learning how to feel for, with real curiosity, the needs underneath the other
Mm.
person's expressions and behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And that growing trust as we start to practice that when we can really feel that need, then compassion follows
Mm.
naturally, because it does. Um,
Yeah.
so even as they're hauling out their dictionary and wanting to pin you to the thing that you said, you're like, oh, I can really feel, and I might just be thinking this, not actually saying it out loud, but
Yeah.
really feeling how much they're longing for clarity and shared reality as they're
Yeah.
pinning you down, or for safety
Yeah.
that might come through through that clarity, or certainty of understanding.
Mm. Need for
Yeah.
predictability too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
predictability.
So
Yeah.
many things can come up like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. So I
Mm.
love that when we can take when we have a practice to where we really do know, we're able to embody our sacred values
Yeah.
and actually know the flavor of when there's the beauty of the need that's met,
Yeah.
the living energy of the needs.
Mm.
That can be our solid ground that we can come back to within ourselves when we
Mm.
self-connect, that can support us to get very curious about what could it possibly be for this other.
Mm.
Because I really liked
Mm.
those guesses that you just made. That was quite lovely to receive. um, and I was able to actually see, yeah, I think that really was what this other person was really
Yeah.
needing, but they didn't
Yeah.
have a consciousness of it.
Mm.
But even if the other person doesn't hold the consciousness,
Mm.
when
Mm.
we're able to hold the consciousness, it shifts the relationship anyway,
Yeah.
because it takes
Yeah.
the stickiness out of it.
Yeah. 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 And it allows, I'm just testing this in terms of the feeling in my own body. It allows us to come back into the flow um, of compassion, and I guess you could say it allows us to come back into ventral vagal
Yeah.
social engagement, even if the other being is not there. And sometimes I think the distress that I experience when the other person leaves the relationship in some way, it's the well, what happened to that safe and social feeling that I was having, or that
Yeah.
I was longing for and reaching for. But if I can come back to that myself,
Yeah.
whatever they're doing, um, it's going to feel a whole lot easier.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, and the practices that we're talking about are all ones that actually support us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe also to invite the other person back into that safe space.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, there's two things I was thinking of, but the one that I just thought of, as you said that, how we invite someone into a conversation is going to make a big difference. So if you've done something and I really don't like it, and I come to you and I say, Ingrid, I really did not like that you, and I go off like that. That kind of
Yep.
sets the tone for the conversation.
Yep.
And when I'm able to slow down enough to be in what I really would enjoy and take the
Yeah.
time to get there instead of just being mad that I'm not there.
Mm.
When I take the time to be there, then I can extend out from there to invite you to come there. So that's part of
Yes.
what I found to be super helpful is when I can get to the deepest need in
Mm.
me,
Mm.
I
Mm.
feel a different shift to where there is an invitation rather than a demand.
Yes. And when I track how I experience those two different states you've just named
Mm-hmm.
in my body, the I really didn't like didn't like the way you said that. I notice I notice my whole body kind of goes and sort of
Yeah. No
goes into this
wonder.
kind of
Yeah.
spiky, and all the energy kind of comes up, and it comes up into my shoulders and my face and my head, and whereas the you know the inviting, what I would really enjoy,
Mm. Yeah.
relaxation, a kind of an openness that I feel right down through the core of my body,
Yeah.
and a warmth. Mm.
Yeah.
And
This.
even if I imagine, um, some information in that communication, which has me realizing that, the way I had expressed myself might not have been enjoyable for you, I'm much less likely to go into shame
Yeah.
if I'm experiencing an invitation to join you in this connected place.
Yeah.
Mm, mm,
Absolutely. Well,
yeah,
it makes it safe to then unpack it a bit
yeah,
and recognize how we might have gone into an automatic pattern,
mm, mm,
but it's safe to come back and make a repair then.
yeah, yeah.
So the first rupture of what I notice, they're not being relational. There, right
Mm,
there's the rupture.
mm,
When I can take the
mm,
time to become relational myself, I can check in with the other person to see if they're willing or they have the room to be relational.
yeah,
And so how critical it is to really stay firmly rooted and grounded in our own sacred values.
mm,
And that's the energy that supports us then to continue to be relational right there.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Huh.
Hmm. Was there
This
something
is,
else you were going to mention, Gloria? I think
yes,
I
and I
thought
didn't
there
write
was.
it down. I'm like, there's two
Uh,
things, and I'm going to go with this one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh well.
It might pop back up. Who knows? It's
Yeah,
been
it
known
might.
to
It
happen.
might.
Yeah.
Mm, mm. I suppose one of the things that occurred to me as you were speaking just then too was just how powerful shame can be in
Oh,
creating ruptures. Mm, mm. And so looking for ways to invite ourselves or to support ourselves when we start to go into a shame place, and to mm, invite others to come out of it in a gentle way, yeah, is a really powerful part of learning how to stay relational ourselves. Mm,
yeah. And in my experience, that has really, I've needed tons of empathy support to be able
yeah,
to
yeah,
begin to really heal the shame patterns that were really deeply embedded,
mm,
that have the tendrils in I'm not enough,
yeah,
all of those.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not, fill in the blank enough. You can put
mm,
anything in that box,
mm,
but there's a real deficit of it kind of ties into a different topic, that emotional intelligence. When
mm,
there's neglect or there's just not a relationship available,
yeah,
then our automatic reaction is going to be, it's my fault.
yeah. Which, by the by, because I'm just thinking, my shame self talk probably more has a flavour of I'm too much,
Oh, so yes,
rather than, yeah. So it can go either way, right? It's our fault, but
yes,
it can come packaged in a variety of different forms. Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, and
mm,
so the need underneath that is even just the need to have the freedom to experience what it's like to be who you are and to be met right where you are, and
yeah,
that's all right, that's
yeah,
enough and it's welcome.
yeah,
I know there's been folks that I've worked with that it's like they could barely take a breath because they had so much they
mm,
wanted to say. And to be able to really
mm,
capture what they're saying and then slow them down, interrupt with grace and say, I'm wondering if I might catch a little bit of what you're sharing because it's really important to me. I
mm,
want to make sure I'm catching it all.
mm,
And then to reflect it back a little bit, it's like a whole new experience that you actually track what they said.
mm, mm,
Because there are some that have not had the relationship. And now, if you're available, I'm going to tell you my whole life.
yeah,
And so to start to have where someone can tune in and start to invite a rhythm
yeah,
with
Yeah.
grace. I think we need lots and lots of grace
Yeah.
so that we don't trigger that shame reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet we can still model really healthy, authentic limits in
Mm.
relationships.
Mm. Mm.
Even being able
Mm.
to learn how to say, oh, I'd love to continue this conversation and I'm needing to da 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 da. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to, and then ending with a clear
Yeah.
request. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are all skill sets that are
Yeah.
so helpful when we can
Yeah.
practice them and remember them in the moment.
Yeah. 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 And I was thinking of a variant, a kind of a variant of, when people start to know that or start to think that it might be okay, there might be a space where they can express how it is for them. I think this is true. How can I say it? But they're not quite sure that they can really express the true essence of it.
Mm.
And so they'll sort of talk around the edges of it a little bit,
Oh,
and
yes.
maybe talk in general terms. Talk about, um, not saying this is how it is for me, but talking we and us, you, second and third person sort of expression, and so they're not quite being fully relational with themselves in that moment, and they're not quite being fully relational with us either. There's a little distance in between. The importance of, again, really gently catching and reflecting back in terms of inviting them to really feel that this is how it is for them specifically, not for
Yeah.
everybody in general, and
Yeah.
the transformative power of that when it's done
Mm-hmm.
in an attuned way,
Mm-hmm.
to build a relationship with self as well as deeper connections with everyone else.
Yeah, another skill set in supporting people to communicate and stay relational with one another is even being able to notice the body language
Yeah.
of the one they're talking to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And many times when in those contexts a person is speaking, they get so caught up in what they're saying that they're no longer seeing the person they're speaking to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember Marshall Rosenberg would suggest that people speak in 40 words or less in order to check in with the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So learning how to share a conversation, it's a skill set that many
Yeah.
haven't gotten to experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Mm.
Mm.
So it's been a really fun exploration today.
It has. It has. Yeah.
We got
Thank you.
lots of nuggets I think our viewers can enjoy and tease
Yeah.
apart.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So people
Yeah.
want to reach out to you, Ingrid. Share with our viewers
Yeah.
how they can find you.
Yeah. Easiest way to get in touch with me is through my website, and there's an option there to either give me a call or send me an email. So the website is www.ingridgunby.com.
Beautiful. And for
And
those
how
of
about
you that would like to reach out to me, I'm just going for it here.
good?
You can reach me on my website, healingyoursanctuary.com. And you can book a free 30-minute consultation. And I'd love to have a chat with you around whatever topic you're interested in. I look forward to next
Yeah.
time. Okay.
Yeah. Me too.